Welcome, everyone, to the Garden Nerd Tip of the Week podcast, where garden nerds from around the world talk shop, share stories, and offer their favorite tip. I'm your host, Christy Wilhelmy. Real quick, before we get started, you've all been listening to us. Now we want to listen to you. Please, please, please go to Gardenerd.com. That's GARDENERD.com/podcast-survey to share your thoughts with us. Tell us more about you and what you want to hear in an upcoming episode. Thanks so much. Now on with the show. This week, we welcome Ashlie Thomas to the podcast. Ashlie is an author, health coach, and food security advocate that you may know as the Mocha Gardener on Instagram. She grows food in North Carolina, where she shares her passion for health and wellness. Her new book, How to Become a Gardener, Finding Empowerment and Creating Your Own Food Security. I love that title. It's out now. Thanks for joining me, Ashlie.
Hi, thank you, Christy. Thank you for having me on here. And hello, everyone.
I was really excited to see you speak on a panel at the GardenCom conference that we just had. I went back and was watching all the panel discussions and presentations that I missed. And so I caught yours in that after party, I guess you could say. And I knew right away that I wanted to talk more with you and about your passions, because that really came across in the discussion. So which came first to you, gardening or health and wellness?
That's such a great question. And thank you so much for watching the GardenCom event. That was absolutely fun. And I learned a lot as well being on there with all of those other panelists. But which came first, health or wellness or gardening? I feel like they go hand in hand, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to honestly say that there were crucial moments throughout my life that really helped me to understand and appreciate nature just a bit more. And gardening was kind of like a vessel into, health and wellness through enjoying nature, but also health and wellness through growing good food that we need to thrive. So I would say that my focus throughout life has always been to live well and live abundantly, to eat well and to eat abundantly. But how do we get that? How do we gain access to eating what we need? And I found that gardening can provide greater access to that. So health and wellness came first for me.
Okay, that makes so much sense. I think for me, because it was when I became a vegetarian that I started really learning more about gardening, because I wanted to know more. The more I learned about our food system, the more I wanted to take control over it. It just got scarier and scarier out there. So yeah. Now, I've seen some of your videos on Instagram, and you have a greenhouse, which is, I know a lot of people want. I don't need one because I live here in sunny Southern California, and we don't really get a frost, but I'm assuming you do. Can you describe your garden and where you grow so our listeners can transport themselves to your yard for a moment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like being able to kind of paint a picture of the garden. But before I speak about the present, I like to talk about the past.
Ah,
The greenhouse that you see was not always there. We started out with like the little cute little Aldi greenhouse that you can just pitch up. It was the green, the little green plastic thing. And believe it or not, what you see, the garden that you see, our first, and I think it was for about a year and a half, we grew using that plastic little greenhouse.
mm.
It was about 2 feet wide. It was a square and it came up to about 5 feet tall. And I did all of our growing through that. I had the pitfalls of things being hit by the wind and the whole greenhouse falling over. But I like to speak about those humble beginnings that weren't really all that humble, because we grew a lot using that thing.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. And I think that that speaks to really just the magnitude of being able to start with little, or just start with right where you are. And now we've moved to this 12 foot by, I think, 10 by 12 greenhouse, that we do all of our growing year round in that. And the reason why we opted to go big or go home is
Hmm.
because yeah, we do hit that frost, and typically the frost comes at about late October for us. And that little greenhouse wasn't cutting it anymore. So we knew that we wanted to grow year round and not just in the spring. So we invested in a bigger greenhouse, and that helps us to not just grow throughout the year, but to also grow a wider variety of, tropical fruits and vegetables. And
Ooh.
oh yeah, we drew the fruit trees. We keep those in the greenhouse, and it really just helps us to stay ahead of our growing season. So
And my understanding from what you described early on in your setup, you have an acre to work with. Is that true?
we do have an acre to work with. Do we grow on the full acre? No, I don't want to take over the entire yard. I've
Hmm.
slowly just kind of taken over the space, and my husband likes it now. But but we are really growing on about, I would say, about 5,000 square feet. So, it's not even half or a quarter of our full property that we're growing on.
And so, in addition to the greenhouse, you've got some raised beds and some fruit trees as well.
Yeah, so we've got some fruit trees growing in different places around our property. We also have our she shed. The she
Oh.
the she shed is basically, I think that's about 12 by 12. And we wanted to grow something that we didn't have to go through the whole permitting process, but it's fully solar powered. It also has the capability to be powered through, an outlet. And we use that to do all of our vegetable processing. I do all of my canning, I do my teaching,
Oh,
and it's just
wow.
a gathering spot in our garden. So you'll see the she shed, the greenhouse, fruit trees around, the raised beds, and now our chicken coop.
Oh, yay. Yes. I saw on your Instagram that you had eggs coming in. So congratulations. Is that a new addition to your garden recently?
It is. The chickens are a new addition. It's something I've been asking for a couple of years now, and my husband finally came around to getting it, and he loves them. He loves those chickens.
They're delightful. I think the first month I had them we've had them for about a decade now, but the first month I just pulled up a chair and just sat there watching their little fluffy butts walk around the whole run. Yeah.
It's so easy to just get engulfed with their little activities. So
Yeah. So let's talk about food security for a minute. Your mission is to help create food security for others and to help people create that for themselves. How are you working to do that?
yes. So this is such an interesting discussion because sometimes when we think about food security, we're automatically thinking about policies and, you know, entities higher or way bigger and wider than us, really trying to bring access to people, access to nutritious foods for us. And, being someone who has gone through or experienced food insecurity, which means that you don't have consistent access to nutritious foods or foods that are conducive for thriving. And that's regularly. We need these things regularly. Um, Having been that person, I got fed up and I was like, I don't want to have to rely on someone to get the types of foods that I need. And food is very personal.
Mhm.
This experience and how we consume foods is very personal. It varies from individual to individual and culture to culture. And so I thought about, how do we begin to provide access for ourselves? What does that even look like? And from my experience in South Carolina, where I watched my grandfather tend to his small garden, and I got to see food growing from the ground with our hands. And that was a defining moment for me because I said, if we could grow food using whatever space we have, that's power. That's
Mhm.
liberation. That's freedom. That
Mhm.
opens doors to possibilities that many of us could not ever imagine. But I want to make that tangible and show people how to do that.
you have this great chart that defines the terminology like food insecurity, but you said something I hadn't heard of, food swamp. Tell me
Mhm.
what that is.
Yes. So I want to speak about that chart because as I was, in the book, I like to think that I am guiding individuals, friends. I like to call people friends. I like to think that I'm guiding you guys through my garden. And I want this to be very personal and so easier to understand versus opening up some type of medical article that has a bunch of different words that you don't really understand. So I thought to, really break down, what do these terms mean in the first place? How can we become something or achieve something that we don't even know about?
Mm-hmm.
So the first step is to really define that. So when you think about, we often hear food desert, but what does that mean? If we think about a desert, that means that it's kind of void of things, right? It's missing life. What we perceive to be life, because a desert actually has a lot of
Has a lot of life,
it
right?
has a lot of
Exactly.
life in it. But it's dry. It's not quote unquote thriving.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, However, many places, I don't know if you've been in locations that have a lot of food, but it's the quality of food that I want to emphasize. So here in Alamance County, where I live, I'm in Graham, in the city of Graham, that is located in Alamance County in North Carolina. And what we have here are a lot of fast food restaurants. And this isn't to say that fast food is bad for you, because that is not my place to interject that type of thought. However, if you are saturated, if there's a saturation of these types of restaurants and access to more, local produce, fresh fruits and vegetables, or wider food options, if that's not readily available, you found yourself in a swamp. It's this place that is saturated with, um, you know, fast food restaurants or places that do not carry a high nutritional value.
Got it. Thanks for clarifying that. So your book, How to Become a Gardener, I felt like it read almost like a diary. It's really personal, and there's a lot of poetic prose and stories that I found really inspirational. Congratulations on that. Uh, for example, you said, and I'm paraphrasing, that it's hard to grow a garden without also growing the gardener. I liked that idea, and it's something that certainly is true. What's something that you learned along the way during your journey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, I thought about this as not just as I was writing, but these are things that I had to walk too. So it's one thing to just type away or write away at something, a thought, but these were lived things as well. And based upon the people around me and the growers around me, it's a lot of these things are common. So one of the things that I kind of learned was just this idea of perfection, things going the way that you want them to go all the time.
Yeah, I hear you.
The garden and nature in general will definitely check you and let you know that, hi, you didn't create me. You may be nurturing me, you may exist in me, but you did not create me. And I think knowing that and learning and having to accept that, guess what? You can't control nature. All you can do is learn it and work with it. That was the biggest lesson uh, that I've learned as a gardener. And it's helped me to kind of walk life with that mentality of you can't control everything. And even the things that you do have control over, except that, guess what, things might not go the way you expected it. And how do you govern yourself from there? How do you continue to be a good steward over yourself and the things that you push out into the world? So that is the biggest lesson that I've learned. It was rough, Christy. It was but it refined me in a way that now I view that so comforting. It's quite comforting to be able to let go of things when you need to let go or accept things when you need to accept it. And it's kind of a the foundation of being a human, just recognizing our limitations. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to throw you a little curveball here. How did this help you accept frogs?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so that's a work in progress.
Explain.
That's a work in progress. Okay, I will say that and for anyone that's listening, the story of the frogs is outlined in the book. Simply put, I have a phobia of frogs, okay? And it started back in my childhood. Something traumatic happened. A little kid was like throwing frogs, and I had this horrible memory,
Oh
and
my
that
gosh.
carried along with me. But it turned into something irrational where I just did not want to see a frog ever. But I'm going to be honest with you. When I started to learn, you know, what makes an ecosystem healthy, all of these, all of these organisms and their functions, indicator species, why they're important, I began to say, I wish I could kind of take those words back, that I never want to see a frog again, because not seeing them was scary. And I think it showed me that even though I may not understand something, an organism's function, or even if I may not understand why something exists, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have a purpose. And so with the frogs, I think it was understanding that you're scary. First of all, the likelihood of you licking me is very low. Likelihood of you hopping on me and just staring me in the face is very low, but you are needed. And I think that understanding, understanding why, why it's here, and recognizing and appreciating that, hey, you're here just like me. I don't want anyone to wish me away. Like, it helped me to begin to kind of move past that phobia. So now I actually enjoy seeing the frogs. Do I want to touch it and, lift it up to the sky? Absolutely not.
Still
But
no.
I recognize that it is very important in my space, and it makes me happy when I see them in my space, because I know that I've got some equilibrium going on here.
Yeah. And I'm still trying to figure out the life purpose of fleas, but someday maybe that will become apparent. I don't know. Uh, but knowledge is power, and you talk about reclaiming your food authority, which you've already talked about a little bit, by just growing food yourself. But what does that look like for the new gardener versus the more experienced one? Does that have a different shape?
It yes, it could. It really could. But I think it all goes back to, why are you doing this in the first place? And that is why I wanted to start the book with defining your why.
Mm-hmm.
You understand why you're doing something, it helps you to have a better perspective of why you need to continue it, and how you're going to walk forward. How are you going to walk forward as a gardener in this space, and you become a bit more conscious of how you operate in what you're cultivating and what you're nurturing. So when it comes to reclaiming, I sat with that for a while. This is around the time when I had writer's block as well. And so I spent a lot of time in the garden, because I had to really work with this idea of, how do you reclaim something that you never had? Or how do you reclaim something that you don't know is missing? Yeah. And I began to kind of break apart that term and say, well, sometimes we can reclaim things that are lost, or sometimes we can recognize an opportunity to actually leverage, to create goodness out of things that we need, things that will advance us as individuals, but also as a community. So for the new gardener, perhaps you don't know why you need gardening, but I think that therein lies an opportunity for you to kind of claim your stake and saying, I want to grow because I want an opportunity to really ground myself in nature. I want this for my mental health. I want this for, you know, whatever reason that may be. For the veteran gardener, perhaps discouragement got you along the
Mm.
way. Perhaps you just wanted to, you said, you know what, I've tried, and powdery mildew, Japanese beetles, every pest, all seven plagues came into my garden, and I don't want to do this anymore. There's an opportunity for you to come back and reclaim why you did this in the first place and start again. So I think the authority is really giving ourselves permission to move forward and be the nurturers of be good stewards over our environments, and also be good stewards over ourselves. There's I bring in a lot of the how that relates to food,
Mm-hmm.
and saying that, why do you need permission to eat what is good for you? Why do we need permission? We can give ourselves permission. So the food authority is empowering yourself to understand what it is that I need, what is it that my community needs, and how do we get there? How do we go and get it? That
Yeah.
is food authority. That is authority.
Nice. And I think dovetailing into that, you've already sort of talked about the idea of something you say is cultivate the garden within yourself. Uh, that could tie into helping out others in the community or healing yourself from, say, trauma or something like that. I know a lot of vets are using gardening as a way into healing from PTSD. What other options, or I guess what does that look like for you cultivating the garden within yourself?
Yeah. You know, when we think about, taking care of things, I used to be a caregiver. I'm still taking care of my grandparents. Um, but in that, people who are nurturers, we tend to cultivate the things around us, but neglect ourselves.
Oh my God, yes.
And in that, recognizing that as much effort that we're putting into our green spaces and into our communities and into others, oh man, we deserve all of that too. Yeah, there are things that, we've got to be mindful of. There are seeds within us that need to be watered. There are things that need to be pruned away. We can do that same monitoring and carry that same gentle, patience, compassion towards ourselves, the way we do to our gardens. So just as we are, as our gardens are evolving, the gardener has to evolve as well.
Yeah, and I think that perfectionism streak that runs in a lot of us has to be addressed in that same way too, right?
Yes, big time. you know, Man, I just feel like there are always opportunities every year for me to learn, like, hey, guess what? Perfectionism is a farce. Like, like you can strive for excellence, but I think the delineation between going too far in excellence versus perfection is where, if things don't go right, it devastates us.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got to be gentle, because it's a matter of, like, how do you bounce back from that? There's always a lesson to learn in the things that don't go well, or the things that don't go as planned. If everything were to go well, we're not really learning, are we? So that's just, my 2 cents and things that I have learned along the way, and I think it resonates with a lot of us gardeners. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Well, it is tip time. Do you have a favorite tip you'd like to share with the Garden Nerd audience, Ashlie?
Yes. um there's a term that I use in the book, and it's Syncopa. And the reason why I take that term so why I take that term to heart is because I'm constantly thinking, as I'm moving forward, I always want to be mindful of my past. I always want to be mindful of where I come from, but also who's gonna be coming up behind me as well. And as I am moving and learning how to grow food, and doing things out in the community, a lot of community work, and doing things and research, because I'm also studying nutrition. um, I'm also thinking about the greater community. What is this impact on my community? Not just the legacy and not just my ancestors, but, how does this impact those around me as the same, at the same time? And so I want to, my tip to those is, in all the things that we do, be mindful of the people and the things around you. Um, be as you are being a good steward to your garden is your community, your garden is your family, your garden is yourself. Be mindful of those things as well. So, there are many very practical garden tips in the book, but I think, sometimes we neglect ourselves. And I think that the more recent times have helped us to realize that, yeah, we've got to focus internally. So,
Yeah,
focus internally.
that's a great tip. I have this piece of paper. It's actually an envelope that's folded and pinned to my board, my cork board right next to where I'm sitting. And it says, build community around solutions. And that is something I need the constant reminder of, because we're all trying to solve our own personal problems or the problems of the community around us. But we forget that other people make the job easier. Getting in building that community and finding solutions within the community really makes all the difference in the world. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. And thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being on the Garden Nerd Tip of the Week podcast. How do people find you?
Yes. So you guys can find me on social media, Facebook. You can find me at the Mocha Gardener. And on Instagram, you can find me at the.mocha.gardener. I think you can just type in the Mocha Gardener as well. And via email. I love one-on-one connections with people. So I like to chat with people in my DMs. I really care about others growing in all aspects. So if you ever have a question, a gardening question, I'm more than happy to discuss it. Or even if you just want to say hi, I'll wave back to you. So I welcome you guys to please connect with me on social media, and of course through my book, which is on Amazon or major retailers right now.
Everywhere
It's
books are sold. Yeah.
everywhere that books are sold, thank goodness. And yes, I look forward to, just connecting with some of you who have been listening to the podcast.
Excellent. All right, garden nerds, you'll find a link to Ashley's book, How to Become a Gardener, this week on Gardenerd.com. We'll also post links to her Instagram feed and her link tree so you can cultivate your inner garden even more. That's it for this week. Subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen. Visit us for tons of free gardening information at Gardenerd.com. Show your support for this podcast and the other free stuff on Garden Nerd by becoming a Patreon subscriber. You'll find us on Instagram and Twitter under Gardenerd1, on Facebook as Gardenerd.com, and of course, our Garden Nerd YouTube channel. Happy gardening!